Hello and welcome to another video at Anfield Watch. I'm your host Bence Bocsak, and today I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Ninad Barbadikar, who I have known for a very long time, over 5 years now, I think. Our paths have crossed. Welcome to the show, Ninad.
Well, delighted to be here, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Now, it's probably no secret for any of you who are reading the title right now that we're going to be talking about Florian Wirtz in this part one of a two-part series. No guesses as to who we're going to talk about in part two, but first of all, let's talk about Florian Wirtz. Ninad, you and I, we worked that first time finish around the time when he started emerging as a talent. Obviously, since then, you've moved on to working in the Bundesliga, so you've sort of seen his rise firsthand. What can you tell us about him, just to begin with?
I mean, I think his story has been sort of feels like a fairy tale since day one. Scoring his very first Bundesliga goal against Manuel Neuer. I mean, it doesn't get a lot better than that. And ever since then, I think ever since Xabi Alonso has come in, I think he's just taken another step in terms of his quality, in terms of his sort of trajectory. It's just gone, it's shot up to the moon. And I think he's sort of firmly established himself very quickly as one of not just Germany's best talents, but also I think arguably Germany's best player alongside Jamal Musiala. So yeah, I think the debate continues between the two of those. I'm sure Liverpool fans would love to have both of them, but yeah, we're just talking about Wirtz today, who was just fantastic. So yeah.
Yeah, don't get ideas in my head, Nina, because I am a big fan of Musiala as well. I would definitely love to have both of them, but we'll wait and see. I think he's a little bit more difficult to get for Liverpool.
Mm-hmm.
Back to Wirtz, though.
Yeah.
What do you think? What makes him such a unique player? What makes him a special player?
I think when you watch Wirtz, I think the first thing that immediately stands out about him is his technique. I think he's just a class apart from everyone else on the pitch. Whenever he touches the ball, it's very measured, it's very controlled. He always looks like he's in control of what he's doing. And, the next step that he takes is always, I think he already just knows it in his head what he's going to do when he gets the ball in the final third, in his own, in his own defensive half. He's just a very, very supremely gifted player in terms of his ability with the ball and his vision, his awareness of the game. And that's what makes him so exciting, is that there are so many things to him that you can't really fit him into one definition. Wirtz is just everything in one. And that makes him so exciting to watch.
I wanted to ask you as well, because obviously you do work for the Bundesliga. How is he perceived among Bundesliga players? Is he one of the most popular ones? Does he get the most engagements when you do sort of posts? I don't know if you're allowed to share those details, but is he one of the faces of the Bundesliga, would you say?
I mean, let's just say it doesn't hurt when he scores worldies of solo goals week in, week out. I'll say that much. No, but I mean, he is very popular, and it helps that he is, one of the faces of the league. And like I said, alongside Musiala, he is very much in that conversation of being Germany's best player and being sort of that torchbearer for the upcoming generation. And in that sense, I think he's very much up there in terms of talents and players. I think not just being like potential talents, but like being formidable forces of football on their own. And I think he's very much in that category of being in the conversations of one of the best players, upcoming talents or best players across world football, like in the top 4 European leagues. And yeah, I think that's why we're also excited about him. And that's why, as much as I would love to see him continue in the Bundesliga, it really makes me happy that he's sort of taken the step of going to a club like Liverpool, where his development is just going to take that, next step. And hopefully we get to see even more of his wonderful artistry, because it is artistry. He is an artist on the pitch, artistry in the Premier League. So yeah, I'm very excited.
Now, obviously, you do some freelance work for the Premier League as well. So I hope I won't offend you by saying the Premier League is probably a level up to the Bundesliga. How prepared do you think he is for that step up and to play in the Premier League? Because it is a different sort of ball game compared to the Bundesliga.
It is. And I think in terms of taking that next step to the Premier League, I think is about as ready as anybody can be before they actually do move to the Premier League. I think obviously there's going to be a little bit of adjustment in terms of the physical pace, because Premier League is faster in terms of its, just the speed of the game. Because I think since last season, there's obviously Premier League's also starting to become a little bit more transitional. You're seeing a lot more teams thriving on counterattacks and sort of building those kind of situations for themselves. So in that sense, the Premier League is sort of becoming more Bundesliga-like, if you want to call it, in terms of attacking styles. But the general level of the Premier League, of course, quality-wise, physicality is another level. And I think Wirtz, with his quality on the ball, is already as ready as a player can be in terms of moving to the Premier League. Obviously, his physical stature leaves some room for improvement. You can't expect him to hold up the ball and do things that way, but that doesn't take away from all of his other gifts, which make him such a stand-up player.
Now, you've written a few articles about Liverpool for the Premier League, so obviously you're aware of like the tactical nuances of Arne Slot's side at the moment. Where do you see Wirtz fitting into this team? There's been a lot of speculations with Liverpool fans. Some say he's going to be the number 10. Others have said he could play as a false 9. There's even been suggestions that he could play as a left winger. What do you think? What is his best role?
I think the answer to all three of those questions is yes, yes, and yes, because he's done all of those things for Leverkusen. And it's funny because in the bigger games for Leverkusen, especially against Bayern, he's almost always started as the false 9 and sort of, led the press against Bayern's backline and suffocated them to the point where they just struggle to build out from the back always against Leverkusen, and they always force them to go long, and that's how sort of Leverkusen keep them on their toes. So Wirtz is the guy that Alonso always trusted to keep Bayern's backline pegged in their own half, and I think in that way, that's another sort of a way that Wirtz can be used, obviously in the final third. But coming to Liverpool's system and how he fits, I think it's an interesting one where you obviously have Dominic Szoboszlai, who I think a lot of fans expected that, he will sort of take up the mantle of that number 10 position. And to a large degree, I think he has done. I think, Arne Slot has given him that role, and he's also sort of he's given him a lot more freedom as well, obviously, playing a little bit more deeper and given more license to sort of play on the right as well. So I think Wirtz can be given that sort of a similar role, in that have a little bit more freedom in that number 10 spot and initiate attacks from there and sort of be that link between defense attack. So I think which is what he's very good at, is sort of, finding space between the lines and being the player that picks up the ball, dribbles, and then just, one drop of the shoulder and bang, he's gone, and sort of tries to find the next pass immediately that breaks opposition lines. So that's him at number 10. But again, at left wing, I think we've also seen him sort of drift out to the flanks, collect the ball, and then drift inward by taking on players in 1v1 duels. So that's another strength of his. He is an excellent duel winner, not just physical duels, but also in terms of dribbles. I think he's a very, very sort of crafty dribbler, in that he's not very rapid with his feet, but his touches are so measured, it's really difficult to get the ball off him. So I think, having watched all of his games so far as much as I have, I think the best position probably for him would be that number 10 role, where he can see a little bit of everything on the pitch, where he can drop in midfield and help the backline when they're against a high press, where he can be that facilitator for the number 9 and be that sort of collective link between the front three and the double pivot. And he's always going to be the player that everything goes through, because that's the way you can get the most out of his qualities. So again, I think that sort of begs the question, where do you then throw in Dominic Szoboszlai? And I know, Ben, that you've obviously sort of tried to pitch the idea of Szoboszlai playing deeper for Liverpool, sort of playing in a more deeper role, as he has done, I think, for Hungary a couple of times. So I think that could be something interesting that Slot could look into.
Not just me, by the way. I mean, I think Szoboszlai himself would prefer to play deeper. The Hungarian national team manager likened him to Andrew Pirlo, and dare I say, I mean, he's looking a little bit more like Pirlo every day with the long hair and the beard. So all he needs now is just the long passes and the switches, which he can do as well. I think he showed against Brighton when he played a little bit deeper that maybe that is a position for him in the future. But I kind of wanted to ask you back to Wirtz. I think nowadays people almost take someone who's good in 1v1 situations and completing dribbles for granted. But I think it's a really underrated sort of skill to have. And in this Liverpool team, not a lot of players actually have it. So with Wirtz coming in, he's actually completed the most take-ons in the entire Bundesliga last season. I think people don't realize how much he's going to free up space for others, particularly when there's low blocks. If he can beat a couple of players, that opens up so much space for the rest of Liverpool's attackers, the likes of Mohamed Salah and whoever Liverpool's number 9 will be. We don't quite know yet at this stage, but I think people sort of underestimate that quality nowadays.
And I mean, rightly so. I think Wirtz is one of those players who sort of automatically attracts a lot of defenders to him, and in that way, he can open space up for his teammates. And like you said, the number 9, whoever the wingers are, Salah and what have you. I think in that way, he is not only an effective dribbler against his own marker, but also sort of destabilizes that low block, creates openings for other players, overlapping fullbacks. And hopefully, fingers crossed, alongside the next Bundesliga player that we're going to talk about, you also have Milos Kerkez, who is sort of linked with the move to Liverpool. And I think that could be very exciting to see how fullbacks like Kerkez can take advantage of a player like Wirtz, who is so good at recognizing those movements around him. And that's why, he's been so effective in the Bundesliga, having those links with Grimaldo and Frimpong, always marauding down the left and the right. And obviously they have that freedom in Alonso's system, but it's also having players like Wirtz who can take advantage of those movements. So I think in that way, it's very exciting to see the potential of not just where he fits in, but how others around him could improve because of his presence. So yeah, I'm very excited.
Now, obviously, you hinted at Frimpong, and I wanted to ask you about the departure of Trent Alexander-Arnold as well. We know Frimpong is likely going to be coming in. He's a completely different player to Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's not necessarily the creative outlet that Alexander-Arnold was. However, in a weird way, Florian Wirtz is that creative outlet. So maybe Frimpong will technically be the replacement for Alexander-Arnold, but the real replacement for Alexander-Arnold's creativity could be Frimpong. Or am I just drawing too many lines here and then being a little bit crazy here, like that I think meme from Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
And am I doing that here, or is there something valid in what I'm saying?
I think you are getting excited for all the right reasons, and I think there's a lot of different ways that Slock can go about replacing Trent's long range passing, and the solutions he offers in deep build up. One of those is already what we've discussed, is sort of moving Szoboszlai a little bit more deeper in build up, having him sort of in that sort of quarterback role and using his long range passing. Because I think moving Wirtz so far deep is probably a little bit wasting of his talents, because I think he's far better sort of in the middle of the pitch and being that sort of,
I don't necessarily mean moving him deeper. I'm just, in terms of the openings he creates, maybe it's a different sort of creativity that he provides.
Oh, absolutely.
He would provide in this Liverpool team, but he does add an extra layer of creativity, which maybe Szoboszlai in the number 10 position hasn't done. He's mostly been tasked with, doing the hard grafts, chasing back for Trent Alexander-Arnold and Mohamed Salah. So he doesn't necessarily do the creative stuff. Wirtz, he can do the hard grafts as well. He does cover a lot of ground, but he's a lot more creative in his sort of ability to play through passes and things like that. And like you said, he draws a lot of defenders in, which again creates space. And I think that was what Alexander-Arnold was good at. He was good at finding space and finding those openings. So for me, not necessarily playing Wirtz deeper, but just bringing him into the team, I see him as a sort of replacement to the creative output that Alexander-Arnold put in and the creative threat that he was, essentially.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I absolutely do. I think in that sense, he is very much going to be the player that sort of shoulders a lot of that creative burden. And then how that sort of dovetails with Szoboszlai is going to be very interesting, because I think a lot of his creative potential has not necessarily been used in the best way possible. And I think there's a lot more to come from him, which is also exciting for you guys. But
It's a
also
bit of
they're
a
coming back
headache as
to.
well.
It
Because
is. It is.
let's be honest, because Alexis McAllister is there behind him, Ryan Gravenberch is behind him. Like, how do you fit all these players into one sort of cohesive unit? I think that's a really difficult challenge that Arne Slot has to sort of figure out next season, but it's a good challenge.
It
You'd
is.
rather that than, I don't know, being another team, a different team where you're kind of struggling to find 11 good players to field, whereas I think Arne Slot now has probably 15, 16 really good players who could be starting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I think lastly, when it comes to Wirtz, I kind of wanted to ask you, what do you think is his full potential? If he joins Liverpool, could he become one of the best players in the world, one of the best players in the Premier League? Based on what you have seen in the Bundesliga, does he have that potential?
I think so. I think what I see in him is a future Ballon d'Or winner, and I hope he realizes that potential at Liverpool, because I think in a year of adjustment in the Premier League, because I think that will inevitably happen. That physical adjustment was going to take some time. I think eventually he is going to reach that level where he's going to be Ballon d'Or level good, and he is going to be outright the best player in the world for at least a couple of seasons. I see that potential in him, and I think it's going to be interesting because there's a lot of players who are going to be in that conversation for the years to come. It's not just going to be Mbappe who's going to be dominating that conversation. You have Lamine Yamal, you have obviously Musiala, you have Wirtz, and there's so many other talents that are coming through everywhere. So Wirtz is going to be there. He's going to be in that conversation of being the best player in the world, and hopefully for you guys, it's going to be at Liverpool.
Well, I like the sound of that. Ninad, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for tuning in as well. As I mentioned, there is going to be a part 2 to this, so keep an eye on that next week. For now, just a reminder, we are on Spotify and Audible and all your other listening platforms. So make sure to check us out over there as well. And thanks again for tuning in.